let's just give it another couple of minutes and then we'll get going. Yeah, this has been a while in the making, our research report as research goes. So yeah, very exciting evening for us here at AEEI. And for those who do know us well, so I'm Michelle Matthews, and my business partner Alex Fraser is here as well. You'll probably know us from Viridian. AEEI is the nonprofit arm of Viridian, so that will give you a little bit of context to who that is. So you can see Sung-In is here. Welcome back, Sung-In. Lovely to see you again.
Hey.
Jessica, hi. And a big welcome to Jessica and Gabs from Relative, who were really instrumental in the actual writing up of the report as well. So really awesome to have them here. If you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, I see a few people are. Don't be shy about putting in things like your LinkedIn profile, where you're from, why you're interested here. Do a little bit of networking. We will touch on networking actually tonight because it is one of the great enablers for women angel investors. So please feel free. It's all part of the spirit. Right, okay, we're about 5 minutes in now, so I think we should get going and about halfway to our 100 who we're expecting. So let's get going. Right, hi everyone, I'm Michelle Matthews. I am a co-founder of Viridian and also a co-director of AEEI. We have done quite a lot of research through AEEI, and this is our latest report, an ARISE report. And we'll talk a little bit about ARISE in a moment, but a wonderful initiative to really look at creating more inclusive financial systems for women. And we were really lucky and excited to receive a grant to do this particular work on women angel investors in Africa and the barriers and enablers for those women angel investors. First of all, it's a very important week in South Africa. We would have had this a little bit later in the week, but we're about to have a public holiday. It's Women's Day on Friday. And I think many people around the world will have heard the saying, you strike a woman, you strike a rock, which is from our Women's Day. It's our saying for Women's Day. Women's Day in 1956, 20,000 women marched of all backgrounds, marched to the union buildings in Pretoria against the carrying of something called a dompas, which was a domestic passport, but dom in Afrikaans also means stupid. So it was a pass that you had to carry just to move around internally in our country in the 50s. So we celebrate this today, well, in this week on Friday. You strike a woman, you strike a rock. I've always thought that's it feels like it's a little bit of a Stoic saying when you say it like that, you know, strike us and we'll stand firm. Actually, the full saying from the original song that was sung on that march is, you have touched the woman, you have struck a rock, you have dislodged a boulder, and you will be crushed. I prefer that version. So yeah, I think that's some of what we're going to be talking about today is how powerful women can be when they come together. Yeah, fight for what they for the inclusion that they deserve. Just wanted to mention that. Okay, so I think we've now got over 50 participants. Welcome everybody. Please introduce yourself in the chat. We are right now on the agenda at the beginning with welcomes and introductions, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of where we'll go from here. So we are very lucky to have Sam Nicol here in Canadian morning to speak from Global Affairs Canada, who are the funders of the ARISE initiative. We will then go into an overview of the key findings of the report, and the report is and will be available during and immediately after this session. So you'll be able to look at all the details. We're going to give you a few little snapshots and some juicy tidbits, and then you can really dive in to the report afterwards. And then the way that we're going to do it, instead of going through lots and lots of graphs, is that we've invited some really interesting women in our ecosystem to have a discussion on some of the key themes that have emerged through the research that we have done. So we've got Aisha Pandor here, thanks so much, Karen and Wanganji, and we've also got Yemi Kerry from Rising Tide Africa. So we'll deep dive into some of the themes that came through, close off with just a high-level look at some of the recommendations. Yeah, and then that'll be that, finished by 6:30, and off to the other things we need to do in the evenings as women. Okay, so why did we undertake this research? So AEEI, through Viridian, our for-profit entity, has been very involved for many years with the African Angel Academy. We have helped develop and deliver that program for about 5 years. And as part of that program, we were doing onboarding surveys and post-program surveys and really trying to understand what difference we had made for angels, for the African angels we were supporting. And we had, throughout that program on the African Angel Academy, always aimed to have at least half of our participants be women. So we knew that out of the over 700 angels that have been trained so far across Africa, that we knew that we had 50% women, over 50% women, and that we had given everybody the same access to knowledge, to networking opportunities, to the startup showcases. And yet, when we looked at the data of people coming out of that program, we found that the men who had been trained through the program were more likely to have invested. They were more likely than the women to already be in an angel group, so in some kind of network and making investments, and that they were investing 3.5 times more money than the women that we had trained. And when we saw that, we thought to ourselves, a 50% target for being inclusive of women was not actually getting us the results that we'd hoped for. Or we needed to understand this better. Why was this? Why were these differences happening? Is there a different way we should have been supporting women? How do women want to be supported? So we ended up with a lot of questions, because it wasn't as easy as having 50% women in the program to have the outcomes that we wanted. So we then decided to do this research, understand what were the barriers, or maybe not barriers, things that we thought were barriers that were less important than we thought, that women were experiencing, and then really understand how they could be supported moving forward. And we were really lucky that we could do this research because we had this data, but we couldn't buy ourselves the time to look into it more deeply. And so when the Arise initiative came up, and this was through Andy, we are part of the Andy network, and they're working with the Criterion Institute and 2X Global on making Arise happen. Arise came up, and this particular program has awarded 8 grants across the world to support women, to support research projects looking into more inclusive financial systems for women. Yeah, and funded, as I said before, by Global Affairs Canada. So it was an amazing opportunity to finally deep dive and dig into this question and try and understand it better. As trainers in this space, essentially what we wanted to do was to be offering better support services to women angels moving forward. So that's what we hope to do. With that, I'm going to hand over to Sam Nicol from Global Affairs Canada to talk about why Arise. Why have you supported this as Global Affairs Canada? Yeah, and what are you learning?
Thank you so much, Michelle. Really appreciate being included today. So for everyone here online today, I'm Samantha Nicol, a senior advisor and gender lens investing focal point for Global Affairs Canada's International Assistance Innovation Program. So I'd like to start by just extending my thanks to Viridian and the African entrepreneurial ecosystem investors for the invitation to today's event and the great research that's been conducted over the past year. This is great for the field of gender lens investing. So gender lens investing is obviously a topic that is very important to the government of Canada. It's at the core of our feminist international assistance policy, and it is core to our innovative financing for sustainable development as well. Canada firmly believes that promoting gender equality and empowering women is the most effective way to eradicate poverty and build a more peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable world. So for Canada, adopting a feminist approach to finance means challenging the discrimination faced by women and gender diverse people in the financial ecosystem and uncovering bias and barriers to accessing finance and investments. The Advancing Research and Investment Standards for Gender Equity project, ARISE, as Michelle mentioned, was implemented by the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, Criterion Institute, and 2X Global, and has funded this exciting research that you'll hear about today. And it came about because we heard from the gender lens investing community that there was a need to dive deeper into the research around the barriers and opportunities for feminist finance that takes into consideration the local context. So, we know that women are not all the same around the world. We know that women entrepreneurs face different challenges depending on context. So we are really grateful and interested to learn more about the grounding in the African context, particularly for angel investors. Because grounding it in the local context is really important to arrive at sustainable and local solutions, as you all know. The research conducted by the African Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Investors does exactly this, and it's an important contribution to the field of gender lens investing. It asks us to dive deeper into the impacts that angel investors have on the entrepreneurial ecosystem and dive deeper into the barriers and enablers impacting this group in order to arrive at sustainable solutions. So thank you so much, Michelle, for the opportunity to speak today. And I won't take up more time from all of you because I'm actually really excited to hear from the panel that you've put together today and learn more about the insights that have been uncovered in this report. And happy Women's Day to those celebrating in South Africa. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sam, and great to hear that context. I think we did a gender lens investing masterclass yesterday with African Angel Academy as well, and the way that gender lens is becoming more and more on the agenda for lots of different funds and very broadly in the conversation is due to people who've been pushing it and talking about it and putting it on the agenda and continuing to do so, like Global Affairs Canada has. So I want to quickly make a very bad mom joke and say we would love to take a quick photo because I can see we've got nearly 70 people in the room. And we would love to keep even a few more have arrived. And we'd love to take a quick photo for those who want to put their cameras on, take a quick photo and make sure that we can promote this report along with all the other good work that's being happening around ARISE. So instead of saying cheese, we're going to say deals. I'm going to stop sharing so we can put on our screens. And Sky, if you don't mind taking a screen grab, that would be awesome. Oh, so if you put your phone, oh, hi Helmut, I can see, hi Mariki, hi Lucas, looking swap in the car, multitasking, love it. Amy, hi, it's been a long time. Okay. We have progress's thumb. Okay, no, there we go. Awesome. Okay, perfect.
Oh, you're going to count us down?
I'm going to count down to deals. Yeah. Okay, so everyone, 3, 2, 1, deals.
Deals.
And one more for luck. Cool. Olivia, hello. Okay, this is awesome. Okay, we now can't devolve into a cocktail party now. We've got work to do. But thanks so much, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. And it's lovely to see faces as well, so that we're not talking into the void. Okay, fantastic. So the research that we're here to talk about. The research was done we talked about it's been going on for about 12 months. We started really in depth with doing 23 one-on-one interviews with angels from the ecosystem, mostly women, but also men. And from that, we developed a survey that went out, and we had 73 respondents to that survey. And those were almost 50-50 men and women who responded to the survey. And a lot of the data you'll see from here is actually survey data, then complemented by the qualitative data from the interviews as well. We've got 19 African countries represented in those survey responses. So that was a big chunk of the work. I want to do a quick shout out to Elzay, our research associate, who has turned off her camera because she probably knew this was coming, for amazing support in getting all of that done. And I had the best conversations. I actually ran those one-on-one discussions, and it was amazing. It was really fun work. There we go. It didn't feel like work. But what we got was this, from those interviews and from those surveys, what we got was a bit of a picture of what does our average African women angel investor look like. And so you can see from the image here, we've got women living in Africa, identifying as Black, investing in what are called the big four economies. And for those who are not from the African entrepreneurial ecosystem, Egypt, South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria are the big four, and those are the big growing economies. But we've got investors from all over Africa, and also many of them will invest into their own countries. So we've got Cote d'Ivoire there, we've got Angola there. So take a look at the report for that. We also see that women are wanting to invest for economic growth, but also to create a more equal society. And that when their returns are coming to them, they are interested in financial returns. They're interested in impact returns. They're also interested in the other aspects of angel investing. And for those who are not very versed with angel investing, this includes things like mentorship is a big part of angel investing, because you're one of the earliest investors into a growing business, a business that is going to grow. You are the one with the highest risk appetite. Before anybody else, even the VCs will come in, it's you. One of my most enjoyable parts of these interviews was I was asking a lot of questions of women angels around risk appetite. And it was very amusing because a lot of the women angels talked about how little of a risk appetite they had, yet they are doing some of the riskiest investing that you can do. So it's just also one of those interesting, it's a very nuanced space. But the things that are supporting women to take these risks, if you can see down there on the right, are things like their networks, the fact that they've got amazing deal flow actually, and that she can really work with a lot of professionals that she knows, professional women, to make these investments, because a lot of angels invest actually in groups or as groups. However, she is facing barriers, mainly in having enough time for angel investing. Not always money being the biggest barrier. What she wants to use her money for might mean that she spends it on things other than investing, but actually it is her time and the effort that she wants to put in that means that she's doing less than she might want to do. So just to clarify, I said there were 50-50 men and women, or 49-51 men and women responding. For all African angels, the leading motivator for them was about making economic impact. It's one of the big, I think, differentiators, and Sam talked earlier about investing or looks different in different places. For African early stage investors, moving the needle on our particular set of issues around poverty, around inequality in income is very, very important. But women angels are more likely to not only look for that economic impact, but for the socially impactful investments. Can they actually close the gap for certain groups of people, women included, that they have seen and experienced themselves? And so from that, you will see that more women than men surveyed are investing with gender lens objectives. So far, kind of feels a little bit intuitive. There were a couple of surprises. One of the surprises that we found in our data was that people who were applying, and it wasn't only, some men also apply gender lens to their investments, but any of the angels that were applying gender lens to their investments said that they were actually had better deal flow. So they were saying, yes, I actually find it quite easy to find companies to invest in. So actually broadening that lens to look deeper and to actively overcome biases turned up more opportunities for them. But then, like we said, some of the not so surprising findings were things like having time and resources was a key enabler for women. Women were really, really struggling to make investments without making the time, whereas men didn't really bring that up as an issue. Maybe it's they're feeling less pressure in that space. All things to consider when thinking what to do next. So what are the potential enablers? Women love to learn about what they are doing, love to feel confident, want to learn more. So training and support for them to learn more. They also love to learn from each other. So they've got these great relationships that they can work with. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. They're actually, the more they work with their networks and the more investments they make together, the more confident they get. Men kind of stayed very stable through that. It didn't make a huge difference, but women, as they made more investments, felt more and more confident to lead on those investments and make more investments. It was a big difference. And then finally, something else that is a potential enabler, a little bit out of our scope as AEEI or Viridian to work on, but that there aren't at the moment very strong incentives at an ecosystem regional level for supporting angels to make investments. And we know that we've seen startup acts in various countries around Africa, not yet in South Africa, long story. But yeah, the incentives aren't really there, and women feel that more strongly than men do. So they would really love to see those incentives, understand those incentives, and that would really support them in their decision-making around investing. So there's some of the high-level figures that we wanted to talk about. So what I'm going to do now is talk through, like we said, do a little bit of a deep dive on some of the themes. And the very first theme here is this one where we talked about earlier about how important it was for women to have enough time and resources for investing versus men who had other things that they prioritized on what enabled them to invest. And here I would love to introduce Aisha Pandor. I'm going to stop sharing because I actually just want to put a spotlight on her. Because for me, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about myself now, but for me, Aisha has done such a great thing when it comes to supporting women to invest in the way that they want to invest. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of how I know Aisha. But first of all, for those of you who don't know Aisha, Aisha is the co-founder of Sweep South and was until recently the CEO of Sweep South. She has now founded a new business in the biotech space and is CEO there. But she was for many years the CEO of Sweep South, which, if you don't know, is a online platform for booking, managing, and paying for home services. And it had raised. I'm going to read off of the page because it's too much stuff to keep in your head. But Sweep South was the first South African startup to be accepted into the prestigious 500 Startups Accelerator based in Silicon Valley. The company has operating experience in Kenya, Nigeria, and Egypt after acquiring an Egyptian home services startup there. It's raised over $20 million in venture capital funding from investors, including Naspers, the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, Alethea IDF, and Endeavor Global. Yeah, and the Sweep South itself has connected almost 50,000 previously unemployed or underemployed workers, primarily women, to flexible and dignified working opportunities. So I knew Sweep South. I had met Aisha, and she, yeah, another long story. And a couple of years ago, when was it? 2021? 2021. Aisha was raising a Series B round. Okay, so now that's a big round. And during that raise, she reserved a portion of her shares for women investors only. Okay, at a very accessible ticket size of $1,000. full disclosure, I only bought one, one ticket. But it was an amazing opportunity. I'm still on the WhatsApp group of women who she pulled together. There was like there was a briefing, there was a due diligence folder. It was made so very easy, and it was so very exciting to be part of that whole experience. Aisha, welcome. And please, getting straight to the point on this, tell us, why did you set up this opportunity? And yeah, how did it work for you?
Oh, thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me. Really, really great to be here and actually to talk about this, because I haven't had the opportunity to kind of talk in detail about our thinking around setting up the structure. So I'm very excited to share. So I think, the first thing to say is that as an entrepreneur, I've always wanted to, or gravitated towards building businesses that I can identify with the problem and the opportunity personally. And because I'm a woman, I'm a mom, it tends to be businesses that heavily involve either as customers, or as service providers in the case of Sweep South, in fact, both in the case of Sweep South Women. And with Sweep South, which we founded 10 years ago, we've always had the conversation about representation of women across the business. So it's a business that serves women service providers who find work through the platform. 95% are women, over 70% of customers are women. And so, we thought a lot about the team and the gender makeup of the team. But when we started Sweep South 10 years ago, the tech industry in South Africa was very early, very nascent. And so the idea of bringing on board women investors from our angel to our seed to our Series A wasn't as feasible. And so this structure and this sort of thinking about this vehicle came about as through a conversation about how to address that, basically. And, if you look at the structure of a company and how decision-making is made, I wanted women to be stakeholders as shareholders and as beneficiaries of the value that we create, as well as having women in, senior management, in terms of our employee ratio, et cetera. So that's where this really came about. And then the next question was, well, how do we structure this? Because again, we are talking about angels and wanting to bring angels in, but this was a Series B round.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I found it, so first of all, I so appreciated being invited to invest into a woman-owned business, and at that stage, it was super exciting. But then also I was very surprised at how easy the process was. So easy to get the information, and considering you were juggling a lot at that point, doing a Series B raise. How did you actually facilitate that to happen? And then also I was interested, because we didn't get to talk about this at the time. Was it tricky to fit it into that Series B raise? And I mean, I appreciate whatever you had to go through to make that happen. And thank you.
Yeah, I think so. It's a good question. And the reality also of being an entrepreneur is often like the story that you hear about these things is not the same as the reality of what actually happened. What actually happened is that we were having these conversations about representation. We'd gone ahead and started to raise a round. And then we spoke about the sorts of investors who were in our pipeline. And we did have later stage gender lens investors. I mean, our lead investor was a gender lens investor. But we started to have interested people who didn't qualify ticket size wise. And so in one of our meetings, someone said, wouldn't it be great if we could get some of these women investors in with smaller tickets? And then I said to Simple Capital, who are our funding advisors at the time, how about the idea of setting up an SPV that allows women to invest, but also doesn't make it unwieldy for a company that is at Series B stage. As you can imagine, that was, I think, around a $10 million round, having to manage X number of investors with, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 tickets would have been, that would have been a whole job for me just in its own. And so we decided to structure it as an SPV so that we could, manage everything. There are also challenges with that. I really enjoy good relationships with all of the investors who invest in our businesses. And so unfortunately can't kind of have that one-on-one with everyone who's put in smaller tickets, but it was a good way to set up the vehicle to allow that. And then the process had to be structured. I've seen some comments about kind of relationship with founders, information. We had to make sure that everyone got the information they needed, again, without it being impossible to manage.
Yeah, I found that very, very useful, and having that platform where everything comes in, and every quarter I get my report about how things are going and I read it, and yeah, I love it. It's been really, really helpful. And for me, when we talk about the recommendations in this report, one of the kind of case studies of how things can work really easily for women who want to make investments. So definitely, thank you so much for pioneering in that, as well as everything else that you've pioneered in. The other thing is before I made the investment with my little $1,000, I did a lot of due diligence. I was a typical woman investor and did all my due diligence. And I had seen what a committed founder you had been. So we saw from that slide earlier that actually kind of knowing the founder or feeling like you trust the founder for angels is important, whether you're a man or a woman. So I had met you before, and I'd seen how hard you worked, to the point of handing out flyers at stoplights and things like that. But also I went and then looked at, okay, well, I like the messaging. How did the people working on the platform actually feel? So there was, I went on to Glassdoor, and I was looking specifically not for your IT software guys. I was looking for the women who work on the platform and what they said about it. I looked at the Fair Work Index, which is a really nice report that comes out where Sweep South always comes right at the top of the Fair Work Index, which is a research into gig work and is it fair gig work. I looked into all of that. Yeah, and I think, that is maybe a typical, I didn't know it at the time, but a typical way that a woman might look at making an investment. And also that I was applying a gender lens approach, clearly trying to really look all the way down to how every woman was affected in the business. But the whole point of that story is that there's a strong gender lens aspect there. There's a strong social impact aspect there. You've been raising $20 million from big funds. The impact and or gender lens side, is that been a sort of benefit for you or not at all in your raising?
I mean, it's so inherently kind of tied into what we do and who we are as a business. So, when we talk about that number of 50,000 women who've been impacted, that's something that we report on to all of our investors, regardless of whether they are sort of more on the pure commercial side or the impact side. I think what it has done, though, impact, the consciousness about having impact and gender lens investors on our cap table is that we delve deeper into that and we're more conscious about the reporting. So it's something that we've always done, but now it's become part of our reporting and we've become more nuanced about how we think about it. So one of the things that I appreciated, again, in our Series B, our lead investor happened to be a gender lens investor, which is great. And one of the conversations that we had with them, which I really appreciated, was about the complexity of impact investing, because it's never all positive. Technology and technological disruption is never all positive. And so, but looking at, whether it's net positive and what are the positive things that you do from an impact element, really, was a catalyst for us digging deeper into some of these numbers. And so absolutely, we've gone from, things like, as an example, just looking at, the 50,000 women to what does that mean in terms of households? Well, it's actually a scope of impact of 250,000 people. We look at, again, the team and being a woman-founded business, what does that mean for the team? When I brought on a new CEO, who I was just messaging now, while you were talking, we're still getting some work done, but who I'm very close with, it was important that was a woman as well. When we talk about kind of hours worked and both the women who find work through the platform, but also alleviating the burden of unpaid work for the women who are our customers and the importance of that. That's something that we report on. So it's brought a lot of kind of nuance and clarity into how we report back on impact, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I think that's fascinating. And I think it's really nice to hear that it is something that broadly in the investment space, people are looking at. Because I think when we're looking at something in this research report around, well, and this is going to be the deep dive of our next topic, when we say, well, women angels are supporting women entrepreneurs. And at that really early, risky stage, I was quite lucky to come in at Series B, but there are people being far more assertive than I am around that. But, you know, when you're looking at that, the whole part of what an angel is trying to look at some point is an exit. And if you're really focusing a lot on the inclusivity and on the gender lens, you know, is there a space to exit into where some of those principles can be maintained moving forward for the business as well, so that so that those objectives continue to ripple into the future. So it's great to hear that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that again, that's where it's, you know, having the ability to be a voice when it comes to some of those decisions. So whether it is our investors who really supported, against a little bit of pushback, the idea of us, you know, needing to find a female CEO, and then, you know, explaining that it wasn't just about gender, it was actually about, you know, if you have a business that is serving women on both sides, it makes sense that there's someone who really understands that experience and can identify, because, you know, the soul of the business comes from that, and decisions come from that space. So I think, you know, it's really important to be able to be at the decision-making table and help to drive some of those decisions, whether it is, again, you know, decisions that the business makes, or who you exit to, what is the long-term future of the business. And sometimes it's difficult to balance the sort of for-profit commercial ROI side with the impact side. But I think, yeah, you know, we're still early, we do the best that we can. And I think that the two aren't mutually exclusive.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Aisha. I really appreciate that. I mean, that's an amazing journey to go on with your business that is really now really big and grown, and yeah, to go along that as an angel investor, and to have been had such a wonderful introduction on my own journey. I'm going to let you go now because I know you've got a call after this. You already are very hardworking. Thank you so much for being here and for making the time. I super appreciate it. Yeah, and if there are any questions, I think Aisha's got like 5 more minutes here, but pop them into the chat. But otherwise I'm going to move on to our next theme. Thank you so much, Aisha.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. And thanks for being involved and for the support. Really, really appreciate it, and the work that you're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, great. So that was our theme 1, when we're looking at how can you really support, and why should you support women to invest in ways that are comfortable for them. And I think if Aisha can do it at Series B, then there are lots of other ideas and ways that we can look at doing this for other women who want to invest. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go back to my slideshow here. Okay, so our second theme that we would love to deep dive into. Oh, Christella, Christella, you have a question?
Hi, sorry, able to hear me?
Yes.
Just before moving on to the next theme, I think maybe question and commentary as well. So
Yeah.
I was recently a part of an initiative called Shareholders, and that was basically assisting female finance students at UCT buy their first shares. And we found that about 75% of the female finance students in that cohort had never bought shares before. But when we actually ran the initiative, they were more than happy. I mean, it turned out to be a lot simpler than they initially assumed, and a lot less complex. I mean, cheaper as well. So I think maybe, you know, another aspect to look at in terms of helping women investors, the point at which we do that. I think maybe it's a lot earlier that can happen at university level, because a lot of the male counterparts in that cohort had already started investing in shares. You know, with the women being exposed to pretty much the same things at UCT, it was, you know, interesting to see that a lot of them hadn't, and like kind of engage on that already at student level. So yeah, that's just a comment.
Stella, that is such a good point, and I think you know, that's an even easier way to start. And again, it feels like the same themes are coming through. that there's that the barrier is actually, we can influence that barrier as women together actually quite a lot easier than we think. So that's really exciting, and that is a beautiful example. I think the investing in shares is such a great start. And then you make me want, I'm going to have to get hold of you and say, how do we talk to women at that stage about angel investing? Because I think part of what we've done with African Angel Academy is just try and help people understand what angel investing is and what it is about. And the sooner you understand it, the more you can understand for yourself whether it's something you want to have as part of your like wealth creation journey. It is its own unique thing, but the sooner you can understand that, the sooner you can get involved. And it would be exciting to get involved at that point as well, because a lot of the entrepreneurs, at that point are, it's happening when you're quite young. So it could be really, really empowering and exciting to enable that. Thank you so much for speaking. Okay, great. I'm now going to deep dive into theme 2. Please, if you have similar points to make, I really appreciated that. That was amazing. Please let us know in the chat to put your hand up, because that's what we've got here. So now we're going to do theme 2, which is around women investing in women. And we do see that the percentage of men, so men is the yellow bar here, many of them are not using a gender lens on their investments. And in fact, Karen, who I'll introduce now, our angel investor, also doesn't use a gender lens, but we're going to deep dive into that specifically. She doesn't use she's gender agnostic, as she puts it. But a lot more women are applying a gender lens. And for that gap that we've seen in women getting funded in Africa, women entrepreneurs are only getting about 7% of the money that's being invested in early stage businesses in Africa. To close that gap, to help more women start and grow their businesses, if we can enable women angels, it looks like that could be a really great opportunity to unlock. So I would like to, at this point, introduce both Karen and Wanganji. So Karen studied economics at Regensburg, Edinburgh, and Frankfurt University. She tells me she's wearing her Zambian summer dress because she spends a lot of her time in Zambia, but she's actually in Germany right now. She has been working a lot in Zambia with her company Batch Solutions, which is all around holistic adult education and consulting coaching in the facilitation of capital investment. And I met Karen on a program that Viridian runs called Raise Ready, which is about getting entrepreneurs ready for investment. The same way that angels have been helped to get ready to make investments. And she had volunteered as a mentor there. And in those discussions, she mentioned her investee, Wanganji, and I was very glad to meet Wanganji soon afterwards. And she participated in one of the African Angel Academy's startup showcases. And Wanganji is the CEO and founder of Mighty Fin, which is an online business lending platform offering credits to SMEs. But she specifically actually supports women businesses, so has a really good lens on that. So what I loved about this story was a woman supporting a woman who supports women, and also it seems very much doing that off of a real respect for each other and each other's work. So to kick off this discussion about how women support women as investors and as business owners, please share with us, Karen and Wanganji, how you met and how your deal happened. I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to let one of you start and the other one must just pop in and go, no, it wasn't like that. It was like this. That would be very fun. So I see Karen's unmuted. Do you want to quickly start? And then Wanganji, please give your piece of the story.
I was in Lusaka in February. Because of a new book project, I happened to meet the national coordinator of the Zambia Business Angels Network, and she invited me for their monthly pitching event. And of course, I was curious and went there. And there were 4 pitches, and Wanganji pitched there. So what happened in the course of this evening? I met a lot of great new people, ZBAN members, which is business angels, and startup founders. Later, I became a ZBAN member, and yes, I've made a debt investment in Mighty Finn.
Do you remember Wanganji meeting Karen?
Yes. So like she rightly said, it was at the Business Angels Network. And after my pitch, really, we just got talking after, during the networking session. And she was talking a lot more about what I'm doing, the space in which I'm working in. And then after that, we thought, let's follow this up with a meeting. And when we did, I figured, there was more to her than just maybe capital. And at that point, she said, look, I'm not investing, and, I just want to learn more about what you're doing and the like. So we got talking, and she gave a lot of insight into my business and what I was working on, also particularly for myself as a leader and the team. And through those conversations, then she said, well, I could make an investment. And that opened up for the investment as well.
I love how you talk about the relationship building. I mean, first of all, there was the great network where you got to meet each other, which I think is always so critical. But then the fact that there was a slow relationship building, getting to know each other, offering something other than capital. This is quite typical of angel investing. But yeah, really pronounced here, which I thought was really, really interesting. And I loved how you introduced Corinne Wanganji at the showcase. You said such nice things about her. What is it about her? I know you don't invest specifically with a gender lens, but what was it about Wanganji that really impressed you?
One thing is really simple. I felt she knows what she's talking about. I mean, there are so many people out there, they give you bubbles. And Wanganji, yeah, I mean, she's a professional. I liked her, the sound of her banking experience. And I liked on that evening at the ZBAN event, I liked how she talked about already trying to support female-led SMEs when she worked for the big bank.
Yeah, I love that you say that she knows what she's talking about. And I think we discussed this briefly before. You had this feeling that she knew what she was talking about. And I think sometimes as a woman angel, even if you're not applying a gender lens, you maybe have a little bit less bias about maybe speaking to a woman about financial inclusion. You might maybe said she knows what she's talking about. Whereas I think a lot of women who are running businesses have felt themselves come up a little bit against somebody wants to query that a lot more. So I think we discussed this briefly, Karen, about how while the lens is not there, the bias is possibly not there as well. And Wanganji, I then wanted to move over to you because you are supporting women to get into finance and access to finance. I mean, what have you seen on the ground with the women that you are working with, and why is it that they need Mighty Finn?
Sure, thanks a lot for that, Michelle. So at Mighty Finn, really what we have observed is that many entrepreneurs face significant barriers to accessing finance, even more so women-owned and women-led businesses. And this gap really has been exacerbated by the fact that they don't have access to formal financial services, even more so less than their male counterparts. And this is also further increased by the limited access to capital. Also, they don't have, good credit scores that they could use. And also women businesses are less likely to get funding, from either financial institutions, or it could be angels or, venture capitalists and the like. So as Mighty Fin, we've taken a deliberate effort to really just look into how best we'll be able to leverage technology to close this gap and ensure that they have quick and affordable financing, or access to quick and affordable financing to run the businesses.
Fantastic. I think what's really interesting about that is that, this is throughout the value chain of a business at any point of its maturity and its access to finance. A lot of women-owned businesses are struggling to get that access. And by the initiative of Arise, for example, or the initiative that we're looking at here is, can we close that gap with other women who might be more willing to support, more willing to, I was reading something the other day about how there's just an assumption that women might default more on loans, that they won't maybe make the profit in their businesses to pay it back. All these assumptions that people have. One of the amazing things about Women Angels is that these are people who have become financially successful themselves as women, believing that other women will become financially successful, believing in women who believe that other women, like you, Wanganji, do, will become financially successful. And what a great unlocker that is of that impact.
Michelle, may I add something to this?
Yes, please.
Maybe sometimes I'm in the danger of being naive because I do not realize how much bias there might still be out there. For me, it's so natural to just see the person, And when I met Wanganji, there was another lady a lady founder who pitched, and I looked at the people and the business models, and later I had chats with two people. I had chats with these two ladies. I thought the most interesting business ideas, the most interesting founders. So it's just a natural thing for me, but others might have other biases. They might have a different life, a different journey. For me, you mentioned that I was a member of cohort 10, AAA cohort 10. It's been an amazing experience with more than 80 powerful ladies from the African continent and the diaspora. This is something which really gives me hope for the prosperity and the development and growth on this continent. This is such a force. Yeah, wonderful.
It is. And I think you've made a great point there, Karen, as well, around the gender lens being a lens where you're looking at a business owner, looking at her business, considering how you might unlock things, still wanting a really strong business, because I think we're not, there isn't a compromise on that. We've spoken about this before. People are not compromising around the strength of the business. People still want their return. As usual, I feel like sometimes as women, we're making it hard for ourselves, but it's like, now we're going to make the financial returns and the impact returns and help all other women. But, I'm multitasking, and I'm being a little bit facetious here. But yeah, I think that's a really, really great point, first of all. Second of all, that there are more and more women that are involved, like the 80 women who were part of the African Angel Academy. Oh, sorry, Wanganji. I think we've lost you there. The more of those people who are capacitated and feel confident to invest, the more women there are to see other women. So that, okay, you're back. So that that person that maybe didn't work for you as an investment might work for another woman or for another angel. So really making the circle bigger is the intent here. Wanganji, do you have anything that you'd like to add at this point before we close off?
Well, certainly, I think this is a very important topic that we should be talking about, addressing, and trying to be very intentional about. You did talk about statistics that point to women not being good borrowers. I think, on the contrary, we have had a very good experience, and not only are they good repairs, but they also invest back into the community, into their families. So we're really seeing some great impact on the women that are actually accessing these finances, and also the impact they're creating within their homes. They're now able to access financial services, savings, credit, insurance, and also, build kind of like real estate to help themselves. So yeah, I think we can continue, breaking glass ceilings and helping women to rise as we rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wanganji. We were having that discussion in our masterclass yesterday with a stat that came up about how women will spend 90% of their income back into their families and communities versus 30 to 40% of male parents. Male parents who on average spend 30 to 40% back into their families. And it's quite interesting from a consumer perspective, if that is a defensible point, but it's also the idea that that also makes the circle bigger for everyone. So that investment back into societies actually, again, then amplifies any investment that an angel is making into those women. So I think it's really, really important to acknowledge the power that women have in that economic space. I can see there are a couple of things in the chat. A few people have to leave. Susie has to leave from Criterion. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Wanganji. Thank you, Karen. I'm going to deep dive now into our third theme for the evening, our third and final theme. And for this, we've invited Yemi Carey to join us. And this is us talking about that amplifying effect of women's networks, about how women meet each other, the trust and the relationship building, and also what that enables us all to do as women who are wanting to grow our wealth. So I'm going to introduce Yemi briefly here. First of all, this piece of data shows that women trust other women to lead networks. We've seen before the data that says that women know a lot of other professional women that they'd love to invest with. They know people that love to lead a syndicate. They are not necessarily very confident, if you look at the data, on themselves leading a syndicate, but as they make more investments, they become more confident. So the reason we have Yemi Carey here is that she is a co-founder of Rising Tide Africa, which is a women-only investment. It's like an angel group, but it's like a super angel group because they do a lot of learning and sharing and knowledge sharing and mentorship. There's tons of all of that stuff. And some very clever ways also of thinking about how to manage that so that it also doesn't become overwhelming. But the reason she is here is to speak to this understanding of how women grow their competency and their confidence through networks and how they build on that trust that they already have with each other. So quickly, an introduction to Yemi. She is chair and non-executive director. She's got 23 years of experience in the IT space in both the public and private sector. She's on the boards of many, many things. I won't go through all the list, but it's banks and neobanks and all the things, the chambers of commerce. She is the CEO of Hekabela and the co-founder of Rising Tide Africa, which is described here as a women's movement initiated with a vision to increase women's participation in angel investing as an asset class and to promote education, cross-border investing, and investor mentoring across Africa. Welcome, Yemi. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks. Evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Great, thank you. So first of all, Yemi, I wanted to ask, Rising Tide, there is a sort of a sister, a mother organization that is a global organization. Why an African iteration of Rising Tide? Why did you start that?
Well, it's not an African iteration of Rising Tide. Rising Tide, Europe, I think you're speaking about, is a fund, right? So they have Rising Tide Fund 1, Fund 2, and Fund 3. I think really the nexus of the name was at the time we wanted to start Rising Tide, we had Candace. Candace is one of the members of Rising Tide. I think there were 8 women or so that formed Rising Tide Europe and the fund. And she was around, and really we believe that there's no point in reinventing the wheel. However, the the ethos of Rising Tide Europe was a fund to, of female investors. And what we were trying to do was female investors investing in female entrepreneurs. At the time, this was about 7 years ago when we first started, the European market was more mature, right? Angel investing was not as mature on the African continent. And we also knew that we needed to educate people. We needed to ensure that the women that were going to be angel investors understood what angel investing was about. And we also knew that, the entrepreneurial landscape for the female entrepreneurs was really very vanilla. And so ours was different. Ours is a network of female angel investors investing in female-owned, female-led. And as the years went by, we started to expand the scope to include female products and services that had a gender lens.
Fantastic. And so this is something to offer. Like you say, there were other areas that felt more mature, other regions of the world where it felt like this kind of thing was more mature. But and now we've got an African iteration. Why is there something different about how African women angels invest or bring their resources together? Have you noticed?
How when you say African women, I mean, I don't know how, I don't know how European or the US women invest, but what I understand and from my own experience is that our own angel investors have that nature nurture about themselves, impact, the willingness and the drive to grow the economy and the environment, or their community and themselves. And that is one of the elements that we see in every Rising Tide woman investor, female investor that has joined us. The other thing is that, as a basis for us, our network is built on the element of trust. In other words, you introduce somebody, it's a referral. In the initial stages, it was all about the people that you knew and the people that were relying on, oh, I don't know anything about angel investing, but hey, Ivana or Dolapo, you're doing this thing, let me see what you're doing, right? And it was based on that we started to grow and evolve over the years. So there's this element of trust, and then there's the element of the nature nurture of the women.
And you describe yourself as a sort of the education, there's the investor mentoring, there's a lot of hands-on stuff. Can you talk a little bit about why that much hands-on stuff?
Okay, so if I were to put it in one sentence, right, I would say Rising Tide Africa is a network of female angel investors built by the members, run by the members, and owned by the members. So it's a collective build, right? Only recently did we start having a back office. So people would volunteer their time. And because they saw the vision, right, about, having to give back, which was the real reason why we started of Rising Tide, was to mentor these entrepreneurs such that they can start developing and make successes of their business. That was the real reason. And so a lot of us will come together. These are women that have done well in their own rights, and we would, collectively mentor. Sometimes we call it a strategy session. Sometimes we do one-on-one, and that was how Rising Tide was built. It was only after then, evolving, we said we needed to start investing. You can't bring the startup to this level and not put your money where your mouth is. So we started off the mentoring, then it went into investing. But as a collective, we began to see a certain pattern, right? In when you say investment readiness, what, you know, the same kind of patterns in when the women come to pitch. And we thought, you know, look, instead of us giving back feedback all the time to these women, let's create an accelerator. It's a 5 weeks accelerator. And so the women came together, area of specialization. So the women that understood finance came together and built a curriculum based of your investment readiness. We talk about valuation, talk about your balance sheets, and there's the legal governance, there's ESG, there's your pitching. So it's just a 5 week, so that you can, you know, let these women understand the perspective of what investors look for, the perspective of getting your own business ready, the perspective of understanding your own business and understanding really, is it investment I need or is it mentoring I need? And also enabling them understand that there is the pool of 105 women that are sitting behind this network that you can always access. Because one of the major things that used to be said is where the entrepreneurs could not know where to find the investors, and the investors could not know where to find the entrepreneurs. And so we have given a carte blanche to the entrepreneurs, and so they're coming for this accelerator program. So we are pretty much hands-on, even for our portfolio companies. We take them one at a time. We do mentoring sessions, strategy sessions, and then we put a pool of women behind them. If your issue is technology, we have 2-3 people looking at. So we're pretty much hands-on at Rising Tide. So it's not only about the investments, but it's also about building sustainable businesses.
I mean, I think that's amazing, because we all know the entrepreneurial journey is lonely. I think in a lot of contexts, a woman who's trying to build a fast-growing business might find herself even more sort of feeling lonely. Like, who does she ask for support and input? I love the fact that the whole group works together on creating a shared language between the investors and the investees. Everybody involved in that transaction has a shared understanding of what they're doing together. I love that. I think that's fantastic. And we're getting some really nice feedback about the collective ownership and responsibility in the chat here as well. It just feels very warm. The other thing I liked, Yemi, we had a discussion about this once, about like, well, it feels like, is it more work? But you've put in some really nice ways of letting people be really flexible about how they input, because it can be really very difficult. It's like, be here on Friday to do X, and you're trying to herd cats. You've got also quite a flexible way of organizing for people to give their input. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the ways you do that?
Okay, so maybe if I so one of the things we realized is that, you know, earlier on, somebody has to champion each of the pillars. So we have five pillars really. So we have the investment pillar. Currently, Kristen Wilson is championing that. She's leading that. We have the membership. Ivana Osage is leading that. We have the mentoring. Ashim Egunjobi is leading that. We have education. Chinwe Jemesenga is leading that. So for each, and then partnership is Oche. So for each of the pillars, we put a sort of structure. Structure because we, for instance, the investment pillar has to have a process, right? And so we have people that already, Kristen runs a fund, and she understands how to you know, create that process, and so we have to put a process together. But to the voluntary aspect of the members is that for each deal that we look at, we would have a lead. So when we are doing due diligence, someone volunteers that I would lead the due diligence, and that person becomes the lead on the deal. Who would represent, if there's an advisory board, if there's a board of directors, who will represent Rising Tide on that board, or who is the major liaison? So the entrepreneur always has somebody they can call and say, Yemi, I have a problem. Oh, how can we do this? And then, you know, that is the point of contact between Rising Tide and so that, you know, the entrepreneur can always feel So that is a way of getting involved. The members get involved. However, when we are looking at the investment structure, we also then, if you say you want to lead, then we say who wants to join in doing the due diligence. And then there'll be show of hands. Now, show of hands is going to be led by Kristen. However, there is also what we have identified as our criteria for eligibility in terms of investing, the kind of questions we want to ask, the kind of things we want to see in your data room. And so we share that. Now, the importance of you being part of the due diligence team is that you get to experience being an angel investor. So you have people coming they've never heard, and we always encourage them. I've done it. I didn't know what it was about, but I've done it. And after doing that and experiencing the value chain of the investment process, then I also understand really what I'm investing in. So we always say, do a show of hands, because and other members that already, we have a lot of people that are VCs, members that are VCs, right, that work in a VC firm or another. And so we say there are people here that can support you. The end result is that they're also learning and gaining knowledge of how to be an angel investor, right? That is on the investment side. On the education side, when we're doing our accelerator program like we're having now, it is the members every Friday at a certain time, the members coming, and then all of the participants are there. 4 or 5 members at a particular time, depending on the topic, would volunteer, right, to be there for 1 or 2 hours and answer the question of the participants. And then sometimes they have office hours. So these are little things that we do to encourage participation and the involvement in terms of giving back. In the mentoring, yes, we have what we call the mentoring clinic. So we 1 day, 1 hour, we have so many mentors and as many mentees as we can take. And then we have that 1 hour to bounce off thing. And then, of course, we have then the workshops for the mentors and mentees that we match together. So that is the way in which you get involved, right? That is not to say there are no passive members, in every network organizations, but we've tried to understand the passive members. What is it that you really want? Some of them just want to good deals. Some of them just want to invest, right? And none of this education and everything, but at least about I would say about 80% are those that really want to give back and make. But
there's so many opportunities to get involved, experiential learning, and as a perpetual lurker on various platforms, I know that I'm learning things anyway, even if I'm at that point not putting in. So I feel like the transparency and the openness of the network is helping everyone to learn and participate in the way that they can best. So I love that. Thank you so much for that, Yemi. Yeah, lots of thumbs up in the chat about the great wisdom and the experience here and that we've seen here. And I think, thank you so much for the practical, how do we do it? Because I think we didn't just want to do a research report here that gave you a whole lot of figures. So when everybody who's here gets the research report, downloads it, takes a look at it, it is also really about practically what can we do? How can we enable these things? So Rising Tide has a short sort of case study in there, and we've got a couple of other case studies. How do we actually make this happen? We've also got sections around if you're a DFI or if you're an ESO, entrepreneur support organization, if you're an angel group yourself, what are some of the things you can do to be more inclusive for women? These are the recommendations that we want to have come out of here, because this is what do they call it? Some of our angel friends call it a contact sport. It's a contact sport. You learn by doing, and we really just want to move forward from in practice in what we're doing. I wanted to say thank you to all of our speakers tonight. Thank you, Yemi, but also to Karan, Vanganji, and Aisha, who's had to leave us. But thank you to all of you for giving the context, because the stats everybody can go and look at and read, but these are the stories of how people are doing it, how we're trying to tackle things, help each other, learn as we do. And these are all incredibly important parts of it. And thank you for sharing your stories. So our final little piece here around some of the things you can think about, and there's more detail here, but this is our final closing graphic. How can we think about some of the ways that we can support women angels to invest in the ways that they want to, and if they want to invest more, to invest more. And I think all of the discussion that we've had tonight has touched on these various points, whether it's developing appropriate tools like the Simple Capital platform that I invested into Sweep South with, being mindful of time as a resource, those quick one-on-one mentorship sessions where you can learn how to be an angel entrepreneur in Rising Tide Africa, learn how to be an angel, help entrepreneurs, learn about entrepreneurs and support them, but quick 1 hour flexible scheduling for that, for example, making a program only 5 weeks long so that people can learn what they need to quickly and get going. Helping the founders to prepare for the angel investment, same kind of space. Take gender into account always when you are putting together programs, thinking about initiatives. Take into consideration some of the barriers that we've seen also, and some of the enablers. How can you work on the network more, focus more on the network and supporting people to learn through doing, create, as my husband always says, do dangerous things in safe places and safe things in dangerous places. So how do you create safe places to do slightly dangerous things and grow people's confidence? What does appropriate financing support look like? So we're seeing a lot of women starting to look at debt, because that's how women entrepreneurs like to receive their funding, and it feels a little bit less maybe risky. So we're going to explore in that. We didn't get to do it as much as we wanted to here, but we can see that those things are coming up. So what are the different kinds of mechanisms that women angels could use to make investments into women entrepreneurs where everybody feels much more comfortable with how the whole thing is structured? And then, of course, sharing knowledge, which is what we have done here tonight. And hopefully you found it really, really interesting and insightful. And if you have more questions, that's great. I'm doing a master's at the moment, and you're always supposed to end with further research, and we'd love to do more ourselves. So where do you download the report? We will send a link after this session, but if you'd like to visit either the Viridian or the AEEI websites, you can over there. You'll find the report there. Take a look, give us feedback. If you see anything that you have queries about or want to point out to us, we are printing copies starting next week. So we're going to have lovely printed copies. There's quite a few events happening in Cape Town towards the end of the year. So you can pick up a printed copy there, but help us pick up if there are any errors. But yeah, it's a really beautiful looking report. I'd like to thank very much. I'd like to thank Jen for designing it. I'd love to thank the Jess and Gabs for helping to write it from Relative. And also a big thanks to Elze, as your camera on this time, Elze, our research associate, for all of the amazing work on the analysis and the coding of interviews and everything else that have really helped us really understand our women angel investors more, the entrepreneurs more. And I mean, we're so excited to move forward in this work, supporting women to invest and grow their wealth in ways that work for them. Thank you so much for joining. I think we're managing to finish even slightly early. Did you notice? Very conscious of time. Yeah, thank you everyone for being here, and people enjoyed the format. Fantastic. We really wanted to make it interesting and engaging. Please do read the report, like we said, and get back to us with any thoughts, any further ideas, questions. We're in this for the long run, so always happy to engage around this topic. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening. See you soon. And please share the report.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Bye.